What if true knowledge doesn't begin with what we know, but with what we can never know? Centuries ago, in the golden streets of Baghdad, philosophers whispered a dangerous thought. Maybe certainty is an illusion. Maybe wisdom begins with doubt. The first to open this path was Al-Kindi, remembered as the philosopher of the Arabs. He lived in a world where faith and reason were often painted as enemies, locked in an eternal struggle for the soul of truth. Yet Al-Kindi asked a radical question. Must they truly be rivals? Or could they, in fact, be allies in the pursuit of wisdom? For him, knowledge was not a battlefield, but a ladder. Each rung carried the seeker upward, from the raw immediacy of the senses to the ordered clarity of reason, and finally, to the luminous heights of revelation. To climb was to draw closer to the divine. To think was not to abandon faith, but to fulfill it. Philosophy, in Al-Kindi's vision, was not a rebellion against God, but a deeper prayer, an act of reverence through understanding. And yet, within this vision lay a haunting mystery. If reason is a ladder to God, what happens when the rungs begin to tremble? When the conclusions of logic seem to contradict the words of revelation, are we still climbing? Or have we reached a precipice from which we might fall? In this tension between certainty and doubt, between the proofs of the mind and the whispers of the soul, Al-Kindi left us with a question that still burns centuries later. Is the path to truth straight and singular? Or does it split into roads we cannot reconcile? Long before Al-Kindi, Socrates stood in the streets of Athens, asking the most unsettling of questions. What can we truly know? His weapon was dialogue, sharp enough to pierce through illusion, yet gentle enough to awaken thought. He stripped away the layers of false certainty until only the bare humility of ignorance remained. For Socrates, wisdom did not begin in possession but in loss, the loss of the illusion that we already understood. To admit I know nothing was not despair, but the first breath of freedom. Centuries later, Al-Farabi heard this echo carried across time and lands. But where Socrates trusted in the open-endedness of conversation, Al-Farabi longed for structure. He dreamed of a cosmos where knowledge did not simply question, it governed. In his vision, wisdom was not only for philosophers in debate, but the very blueprint of society itself. The perfect city, he imagined, would be one in which truth shaped law, tuned music, and mirrored the harmony of the stars. Knowledge was no longer just personal awakening. It was the architecture of civilization. Yet here lies the riddle that refuses to die. Can a society ever truly be ruled by truth? Can fragile, contested, ever-evolving knowledge bear the weight of law and power? Or will truth, when forced to govern, fracture under the pressure of ambition and desire? Between Socratic humility and Farabian order lies a question that shadows every age. Is knowledge a lantern to guide the city, or a flame too fragile to survive its winds? Then came Ibn Sina Avicenna, the towering mind whose shadow still stretches across medicine, logic, and metaphysics. He envisioned the human intellect not as a passive mirror, but as a pilgrim, capable of ascent. Step by step, it climbs. From the raw immediacy of sensation to the structured clarity of reason. And finally, to the luminous realm of pure intellect. At the summit of this journey, he claimed, the mind does not merely think, it touches. It encounters the eternal, truths so pure, so untouched by time, that neither culture, nor history, nor even death itself can erode them. For Ibn Sina, to think was not only to analyze, it was to participate in something infinite, to brush against the very fabric of being. But here rises the paradox, sharp and unavoidable. If such eternal knowledge exists, why do we wander in shadows? Why do we argue, doubt, and contradict each other daily? If truth is timeless, why does it feel so fleeting, slipping through our fingers like water the moment we try to grasp it? Perhaps Ibn Sina's riddle is not whether eternal truth exists, but whether we, as fragile beings bound to time, can ever hold it without breaking it. Not everyone agreed. Into this unfolding dialogue stepped Al-Ghazali, like a thunderclap tearing through clear skies. For him, the brilliance of logic was also its danger. Reason dazzled, yes, but it could also deceive, leading us deeper into illusion just when we thought we had found clarity. He warned that logic was a trap, a fragile net cast across an ocean of mystery. At the edge of the divine, reason falters. To rely only on proofs, he said, is to build a house on shifting sand. And Al-Ghazali did not speak of this lightly. He lived it. In the stillness of his own heart, he questioned everything: his senses, his reason, even the foundations of his faith. How could he trust what his eyes saw when dreams felt equally real until the moment of waking? How could he trust his logic when every argument seemed to collapse under the weight of another? He was paralyzed by doubt, hollowed by uncertainty. For months, even years, he wandered in an abyss where nothing felt solid. Yet it was in that abyss that a new light flickered. Certainty did not come to him through syllogisms or the clever weaving of proofs. It came as an experience, a direct, undeniable taste of the divine. Knowledge, he realized, was not simply something to be thought, but something to be lived. A fire one must step into, not a formula one must memorize. His challenge still echoes across centuries. Is reason truly a lantern guiding us through the night? Or is it, in truth, a blindfold, covering our eyes to what cannot be proved? Al-Ghazali's answer was clear. The truest knowledge is not built on argument, but on surrender. And in that surrender lies a certainty no logic can rival. Then came Ibn Rushd Avros, the clarion voice of reason, stepping into the storm Al-Ghazali had stirred, where Al-Ghazali turned inward, into surrender and mystical certainty. Ibn Rushd looked outward, toward the disciplined light of logic. He argued that reason and revelation were not enemies, but two instruments of the same truth. One guides the mind. The other illuminates the soul. Neither should be abandoned. For Ibn Rushd, faith without reason was incomplete. Devotion without understanding was fragile. He claimed that if we neglect rational inquiry, we risk mistaking shadows for substance, dogma for wisdom. And yet he did not dismiss Al-Ghazali lightly. He acknowledged the limits of the human mind. Logic, he said, cannot fully capture the infinite. But to surrender reason entirely is to surrender the very gift that allows humans to reach toward the divine. Here lies the tension. If certainty cannot rest in logic alone, and surrender cannot stand without reason, then where does true knowledge live? Perhaps it exists in the tension itself, a space where thought stretches toward the eternal, and yet bows before mystery. A place where questions are as sacred as answers, and the pursuit of truth becomes an act of both courage and devotion. Ibn Rushd's voice reminds us that the mind is not a prisoner of faith, nor is faith a tyrant over the mind. They are partners, dancing together along the narrow path that leads from doubt to understanding, from the fleeting to the eternal. And in that dance, the golden age of Islamic philosophy found its brilliance. A civilization that dared to ask, dared to question, and dared to seek the harmony of reason and revelation. And yet here we are, centuries later, repeating the same debates. We drown in data, but thirst for meaning. We trust algorithms to tell us what to buy, who to love, even what to believe. But if Ibn Sina was right, the truth is eternal, then no machine can give it to us. And if Al-Ghazali was right, that reason breaks at the edge of mystery, then no database can rescue us from doubt. So where does true knowledge begin? In numbers? In faith? Silence? Or perhaps in the courage to ask the question at all? Maybe knowledge is not a treasure waiting to be found, but a horizon we keep walking toward. Al-Kindi, Al-Farabi, Ibn Sina, Al-Ghazali, all disagreed, yet all agreed on one thing. The question is never finished, and perhaps that's the secret. True knowledge doesn't begin in certainty, it begins in wonder. So what do you think? Can reason ever bring us truth, or must we look beyond it? Share your thoughts below. And if you believe wonder still matters, subscribe and join us for the next journey.